So if I can hand you over to the introductions.
Can we all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany. I am an associate at Morrison and Forster. I qualified into the privacy and data security team last year. So I've been at the firm now for 3 years. I am enjoying it so far. Just in case helpful, I am a Black British Caribbean woman. I'm wearing full black today. Yeah, nice to see all of you here today.
Hey everyone, I'm Shahil. I'm a recently qualified associate at RPC in our commercial and technology team. After doing the training contract with RPC, and I'm a British Indian male, he, him pronouns, wearing a pink shirt for the audio descriptions. Thank you. Good to see you all.
Hi all, I'm Luca Cherry-Cola. I'm an associate in the commercial and IP transactions team at Bristows. My pronouns are he, him. I'm 6 foot, or I'd like to think that I am. I have dark brown hair, I'm Italian, white, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi everyone, my name's Wesley Chan. I am a third seat trainee at Glencoe. I'm Chinese Canadian, wear glasses. I'm wearing a white shirt with a striped suit. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Saskia Rock-Williams. I'm an associate at Macfarlane's, and I sit in our corporate M&A team. I have been at Macfarlane's for 4 years. I did a vacation scheme there, trained there, and have been qualified for 2 years now. For the audio description, I'm a 5'9" Black British Caribbean female. I'm wearing some brown trousers, some really cool leather boots, black tee. Yeah, and proud to be here on this panel today.
Hi everybody, I'm Mike Gorey. I'm a second year trainee at Watson Farley Williams. I'm currently sat in the financial markets team. I've done seats in asset finance and dispute resolution. I'm a 6'2" British Indian male. I'm wearing a blue jacket, a pink shirt and a dark green tie.
Awesome. Let's have a big round of applause for our panelists. So a big panel. I'm not expecting you to answer all the questions each time we go around, but we've got lots to get through today, and I'm sure there's lots of questions out on the floor as well. I'm going to kick off the panel. Obviously, we've got a room full of current university students and recent grads who are kind of thinking about a career in law. Thinking back to when you were making your applications to your firm, what do you think really allowed you to stand out against the competition that was there? And what do you think gave you that edge, either when putting that application form in or when going through the recruitment process? Anyone fancy kind of kicking off with that one?
Yeah, I can, whilst I've got the mic. So when I applied to RPC, I was a second year philosophy student, not studying law, trying to get a foothold into it. And applying for vacation schemes at the time. I know my second year, actually, I was just applying for sort of open days or something to find out a bit more about the firm. And that was where I started. And then my third year, applied for vacation schemes. And for both of them, you had to write a short application, tell them about yourself. And I think, particularly for the vacation scheme and training contract, what helped me stand out, I imagine, was I think I tried to do a lot of stuff at university and a variety of things. A lot of it wasn't academic, a lot of it wasn't professional. And I made a point of trying to find what was interesting about that and what I find interesting about that and putting that into my application. So to give you an example of something which seems super irrelevant to law, I was passionate about meditation when I was at university and Buddhism and well-being and that sort of thing. And I got really involved with a society at my university, which where you could learn that, where you could teach that, where you could organize events around that. And yeah, because it was a big part of my life, I did talk about it in my application. And I found as I was talking about it, like, okay, there are things about this that differentiate me from my peers. I was organizing events. I was passionate about something. And I think that came across in my application. And I remember then when it came to interview time, the interviewer picking up on that, finding it interesting, and hopefully remembering me more because of it. So I think that kind of variety and like genuine differentiating personality, everyone's got something. And a lot of it gets dismissed because you think it's not professional or academic, but I think that helped a lot.
Happy to see who's got the mic. I think, I mean, for our firm in particular, we've got quite a big sector focus. So we work a lot in the transport and energy sectors. And I remember when I was doing my application, there's a lot of stuff in the news about the Suez Canal being blocked and the kind of knock-on effects of that. And, you know, the delays and the kind of the problems that it caused. And I think I really dialed into this issue and really thought about how that would affect the firm and how that would affect the firm's clients. I think when you answer the questions like, why do you want to work at this firm? I think it's important to have an idea of what kind of clients you'll be working for and what the wider news picture is looking like, and be able to talk about that and ask questions and be curious. Yeah.
I mean, on the same sort of lines, I was a biochemistry student at the University of Bath, and I think it's a theme that I'm sure we'll come back to quite a lot over the course of this panel, but tailoring your applications and tailoring the firms that you apply to based on an actual interest that you have will obviously stand out. You have to think from the perspective of the recruiters, the people actually reviewing your CVs. If it's just a cookie cutter, generic template that you've just applied to 20 different firms, all that have different specialities, it's very hard to show the recruiters that you care about the type of work that they do, the type of clients they have. Bristow's, we are a full service firm, but it's life sciences, technology centric. And as a biochemist, I could show that I have a genuine passion and interest in the life sciences sector. And I think that I'd like to think that set me apart, both in the paper application stage, but also when you're in the interview and actually speaking to someone and getting that substantiated interest across in person. That's key.
Awesome. Thanks very much for those answers. So Brittany, Wesley and Saskia, you've all talked about the kind of different experiences you've had so far at your firms. Jat in the keynote beforehand was talking about having a kind of open-mindedness to the different seats and the different experiences that you'll get. I wonder if you can kind of tell the audience a little bit about bit more about the experience you've had and what you have liked, what you haven't liked, what you've been surprised at that you thought you weren't going to like, or something that you thought you were really going to love and hasn't quite been the click, or anything that's kind of paints a picture to the experience you've had so far.
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, when I applied to MoFo, I was almost 100% sure that I wanted to do litigation. I loved watching Suits and all those kinds of things. And I thought, yeah, going into court, I want to do that. Litigation was my first seat and I hated it. Nothing to do with, the people I was working with, obviously. It was just, honestly, I was just bored. I think for me, the day in, day out was reviewing documents, redacting documents, and I just didn't find that very interesting. So I was very happy to be done with that seat once it was over. My second seat was in data privacy and tech transactions. So I obviously qualified into the privacy side. Loved it. Didn't know I would love it as much as I did. But I was trying to be really open-minded, seeing as I thought litigation was going to be it. And then I was like, I don't know what to do. So yeah, loved that. I then went into corporate, which was my third seat, and I was terrified because Morrison & Foerster is a US firm. I heard some things about what, being in a corporate seat would be like. And I was honestly just scared. I loved it also. And that was another thing that really surprised me. And I think that's a good reason to be as open-minded as possible, because if I could have chosen not to do corporate, I would have avoided. But I actually really loved it. And I was deciding between corporate and privacy in the end. And I decided on privacy. But I did really love it. And then, yeah, my final seat was in capital markets and tax. I didn't really have a particular interest, but it was my final seat. And at that point, I kind of was pretty settled on privacy for qualification. So yeah, I think it definitely showed me being as open-minded as possible is going to be the most beneficial, because you truly don't know where you're going to end up. I at least didn't think I was going to be in privacy. I thought 100% litigation. But yeah, so if you can be as open-minded as possible, I would recommend.
I completely agree. I'm pretty much just going to echo what Brittany's already said, but a bit into my journey. So I did what you would call the classic McFarlane seat. So I did litigation, corporate, tax, and private client. And at application stage, I'd pretty much say was open-minded, didn't really know. I think part of the application process is a bit of that self-discovery. You're kind of figuring out what experiences you've already done that might not be law related, that could lend you to a particular type of seat already, or a different type of department or sector. But most people, most university students, you probably haven't had a great deal of legal experience already. So you might be drawing from things that are a bit far removed from that. So at application stage, I was just like, oh, I'm interested in the law. I just don't know what law I'm interested in or how the departments will actually be in practice. And it's really easy. I did a law degree, and it's really easy to say, you know, oh, I did EU law at school. I'm really going to enjoy that. Actually, when it comes to being a lawyer and giving a service in relation to that, it looks very different. So really that just comes from experience, talking to people, seeing what the clients are like, actually being stuck there day to day. And then once I started my training contract and went throughout the seats, I still was really open-minded. I was kind of like, all of those departments that I just said are very broad in a sense. And that was really because I was like, well, let's just kind of be open-minded, see what I'm really good at, what I don't like. And I think along the way, I actually realized there's an element of teamwork and communication that that actually motivates me and I get really excited about. And I think it's because I actually grew up in Barbados. My class, in secondary school was 7 people, really tiny town. And that's just how I learn. That's how I thrive. So I do well environments where there's constant team meetings. Some people really don't like that in legal transactions. I'm like, yeah, really great. Like, let's have a half an hour team meeting to debrief. That's really cool for me. I learned that way, retain information, but I wouldn't have learned that along the way if I didn't try out all different things. As in comparison, maybe I could have been a litigator. That tends to sometimes have a bit more of an individualistic tendency, because you're looking at the law, you're interacting with clients, you're interacting with barristers, and they're going off and doing their work. So yeah, I think it comes with a bit of experience, but I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you just limit yourself to trying different things, especially when you haven't actually started your training contract yet. But of course, as has already been echoed, if you have sort of a sector focus or you have, this knowledge about something already and it's part of who you are, then of course hone into that and tailor that to whatever your experiences going forward will be.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of similar experiences as both my panelists here. So I had a keen interest in insurance when I applied to Clyde & Co. I mean, that seems sort of natural given the firm. And my first seat was actually quite a different seat. It's called Legal Delivery and Innovation. You see a lot of firms offer this seat now to trainees. So actually, it's more of like a business operations seat. You're focusing on legal tech, implementing this into your firm. And honestly, just as a sidetrack, the trainee that I sat this seat with, they just want to finish their training contract as soon as possible and become a legal technologist. So it really just goes to show you have to have an open mind. You don't know what opportunities will come. You don't know what you'll be interested in. And then I sat a second seat in commercial litigation, arbitration, dispute resolution, specific to the energy, marine and natural resources team, except I really didn't engage a lot with this work. So I somehow ended up doing insurance, interestingly enough, or a lot of insurance work, some transactional work. And again, like I expected to do arbitration on energy matters, natural resource matters. And then I sort of developed an interest in perhaps some financing matters. And then again, going back to insurance. So now in my third seat, I am in asset financing, aviation assets, and leasing. And I find it quite interesting. And I developed this sort of interest prior having an interest in transport in general at this firm, but it's not something I would have expected to do. I think I really had expectations of doing perhaps 3, if not 4 seats in insurance related matters, not necessarily transactional. So it's been quite an interesting journey. I think there's a lot of things you really can't control in terms of when you're at some of these firms, the size of these firms, their intakes. It's a business need, right? So certain teams will need more trainees. You never know what you might enjoy. And then even, I know a lot of your students, when you're thinking about qualifying, you don't really know what the market conditions are going to be. You don't know, what's in demand, what's not. So yeah, anything could work out for you. So yeah, keep an open mind for sure.
Awesome. Thanks very much for those first two answers to the question. I feel like the message that's coming through is a real open-mindedness is key, but also really understanding where your passions and your interests lie and seek out opportunities that allow you to kind of explore those opportunities in a bit more detail. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll come to the floor for your questions. In the room today, we'll have a mix of students studying various different degrees. For those on the panel who didn't study law at university, what would your top tips be to your kind of peers in the room who are not studying law and to kind of stand out and to get themselves into law? Anyone want to kick off with that one?
I don't know where everyone's studying. Yeah, I could. So as I mentioned, I studied philosophy when I was at university, super different. Wasn't sure that I wanted to be a lawyer when I went to university, so that's why I took a different route. And in hindsight, really glad that I did. I think some of the best lawyers that I know didn't study law at university. You end up picking up a whole new interest or specialism that you can match with your legal training when you go and do the conversion course. But of course, yeah, I understand when you're in that position, it's harder. It feels harder at least because you're not surrounded by people interested in law. You're trying to find out about it more individually. So what I would recommend is find outside of your studies ways to learn about the sector, as in the profession, the legal profession. And it doesn't have to be getting into a commercial firm or a commercial environment. There's so many ways into the broader world of law that can allow you to start building skills and interest into it. So to give you some examples, when I was at university, when I warmed up to the idea, I found a volunteering opportunity with Citizens Advice, who run a service called the Witness Service, where as a volunteer, you go and support witnesses attending criminal courts around England. So I was at a Crown Court with no experience in criminal law or anything legal, suddenly helping witnesses as they attend court, learning about their cases, and getting to watch the barristers and solicitors do their work. And of course, it was criminal. It was very different to what I ended up doing, but it gave me an insight into some of the skills are very similar and understanding, yeah, again, it gave me something to actually evidence that I've taken an active interest into that world. So that's one I'd recommend. And then as far as like your actual knowledge and confidence with the legal world, I guess a lot of it isn't, you don't need to know technical legal concepts or technical parts of practice. A lot of that I feel like I haven't learned until I'm even qualified, let alone as a trainee sometimes. And when I was applying, I think all they needed to see was that I was interested in the clients and the sectors, and understand some of their issues and potentially at least where they intersect with what lawyers can do for them. And for that, there's so many resources. I would just recommend, as other panelists have mentioned, like being curious, thinking about the commercial world and different sectors and different companies, thinking about issues that they face and what is it exactly that solicitors can assist with in them. And nowadays with AI and with ChatGPT, you have a really helpful learning tool that I would, if I was now in that position, I would make so much use of, because part of it's not just learning, but it's about gaining fluency and talking confidently about these things, which is hard to do if the first time you do it is in an interview. So I would use these tools, or your peers if you find someone else interested, and set up ways to actually test your knowledge, to have practice conversations, gain fluency with these issues in different commercial worlds. And I think you'll start to feel naturally more confident and naturally more interested, and that will come across.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to note is you're kind of already doing the right things by being here and getting to hear from people that are in the profession, those that have advice. I can see your next sessions on commercial awareness, these sorts of buzzwords that you might hear. I think, you know, give yourself some credit. This is the right step. I think one resource, speaking of resources, because there are so many out there, there are, you know, countless platforms that you can get insights into different firms. I would actually say, compared to a lot of other professions, there's a lot out there about law that often there isn't with other different types of jobs. So use all of those. But one untapped channel that I don't often see people using is law firm websites. So, for example, at Bristow's, we like to publish a lot of, you know, thought pieces. They might just be updates in my area about new therapies that have come to market and the potential legal, ramifications or consequences or considerations for practitioners. Give those a read, because you might be in an interview with someone who wrote that article and you might say, oh, I found that thing that you wrote very interesting. I wanted to pick your brain now that I'm here in person with you. I mean, plainly, think about how much that's going to stick with that person, because it's, this individual has gone away, they've read up, they've thought about it, and they've asked that question. That's, ticks across the board, really. The other thing that I think is important to say is, with these events, with everything thinking about law, really use them to scrutinize whether it's the right profession for you. Because a lot of the time it's just like, I'm following this path, I'm going into it. But sit back and think, actually, having heard the things that we've all spoken about and read what I've read, is this what I want? Is it the right job for me? Does it align with my interests and my, aptitudes, those sorts of things? And the last point is, don't be shy to reach out to people. I don't mean to say this and everyone gets inundated with messages, but I did it. I emailed people, I reached out on LinkedIn, and, we're busy people. You might get no response, and that's completely fine. And go into it with open eyes that you might get blanked completely. That's fine. But those that you get a bite from, like I did, a couple of people at Bristow's, I had the most valuable conversations that I could then refer to in interviews again. And again, it also informed my own critical analysis of what the job is and whether I want to do this for the rest of my life. So yeah, don't be shy, but also don't be disheartened if you don't get a response from people.
Awesome. I'm going to pause there just so we can go to questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question they want to kick off with? Yeah, so just blue shirt, back table. If you can just do a quick introduction to yourself and then your question, whether it's to the whole panel or to a specific person on the panel.
Hi, my name is Emma Hathaway. I'm studying economics at the University of Glasgow, and I just had a little bit of a question about the training contracts, specifically about rotating between seats. What advice would you give to kind of make the most out of coming into a new rotation? And then, for example, if that rotation is coming from a seat where maybe the previous seat is something you really enjoyed and you're moving into something that you don't enjoy as much, how would you kind of maintain that motivation, when the work's getting really hard and it's not a seat you enjoy as much, but you really enjoyed something in the past? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't mind taking this one. So the best advice I can give you is, do not let anyone into that thought process that you're not enjoying a seat. I think it sounds obvious, and it might be something that you're all thinking obviously I wouldn't do that. You'd be surprised. There are going to be times, there are going to be seats, even in seats that you enjoy, where you're doing the not so glamorous jobs, the proofreading, the DD, the redactions, whatever it might be. The best advice I can give you is, as much as you can, do that with a smile. It's going to be tough. People have been through this before. And if it's not what you want to do, don't forget that at the end of your training contracts, there will be a holistic review of your performance, and teams will inevitably speak. And if you made it super clear in one of your seats, I hate this, I don't want to be here, I'm not going to do work, or I'm going to be grumpy about it, that doesn't show buy-in to the general firm culture, right? So, you have to be thinking about what you want the whole time, because it is ultimately going to be your career. But yeah, do it all as though you want it, because there might be a situation, as I think you were saying, where the job market, the industry is not exactly in the place that you might want it to be, or maybe 4 people in your cohort apply to the same area, and it could be that that's an option for you to have a full-time role. So yeah, treat every single area the same and give it everything, and you will come across very well, and you'll improve your chances of getting that offer at the end of the 2 years.
Mike, I saw you nodding along to that response there. Anything you would want to kind of add in terms of that kind of motivation and open-mindedness to different seats?
Yeah, just a short one. Even if you're having a bad time in a seat and you're doing the boring work, you're learning something. You're learning that your response to that is, okay, I really don't enjoy this. So it should help form your opinion on what you want to do. So yeah, just basically treat it as a learning experience.
To answer the question. Right, I think there was a question front row, and then we'll come to both these questions here, and then we'll come to this side of the room afterwards.
Thanks so much for your time. First off, my name's Sophia. I'm studying law and IR at Sussex. And my question was, what sort of advice you would give to someone who's sort of come to the realization a bit late that law is what they've been wanting to do. So in the past, they've been interested in something else, and they're now breaking into it. Aside from attending events like this and, you know, applying to whatever internships may come in the future, what things you could be doing at uni in terms of like learning or just adapting better to the new field you're now realizing you want to be a part of?
Yeah. Anyone on the panel come to a decision now? Yeah, Wesley.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely take this one. I'm actually, as I mentioned, I'm from Canada, so I already did a degree in Canada before I came here to do a senior LLB, which is 2 years. I'm also a career changer, so I worked 2 or 3 years in sales as well before, you know, really picking a career in law. I mean, sure, technically the best time to plant a tree is yesterday, but you're here today and you're doing this. So I think, you know, you're definitely going in the right steps. Something to consider also is think about some of the skills you have. I mean, in terms of not having picked law as a career until later in your life, just think about your unique experiences and how you can translate those, you know, into what employers want to see. Because realistically speaking, I mean, to touch based on another question that was asked, 50% of the qualified solicitors are non-law students, right? So we want to see, or the employers, they want to see something different, right? They want to see that you have that skill set, you have the ability, you know, but they can mold you and teach you all the technical bits. So I don't think you have to worry too much about necessarily being behind, let's say, because I think everyone has a unique pathway and you just have to, you know, touch on those, what makes you unique and how that's relevant to perhaps a career in law.
Does that answer the question? Cool. We'll go to this gentleman here for the next question. And then we actually have a question from the virtual audience, and then we'll come to this side.
Hi, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Robert. I'm a third year from Warwick, studying philosophy, politics, and law. And I have a question more for Brittany and Saskia. Could you tell me a bit more about your disappointment with the litigation seat in particular? Where did that misalignment from the SQE come from, essentially?
So I did the LPC. I actually have no idea how the SQE works, unfortunately. But I think when I did dispute resolution on the LPC, to me, it felt like, okay, I just need to know the civil procedure rules. That's fine. I can just read them and learn them. And then I think for me, it was, although meant to be in practice, it was definitely a lot of theory, kind of learning how it's all going to work and how, you know, going to court works and things like that. Then turning up in my litigation seat on day one, obviously I'm not expecting to go to court day one, which didn't happen. But I think for me, I maybe had such tunnel vision on preparing arguments, going to court, that sort of a thing, that then I kind of almost set myself up for that disappointment, if you know what I mean. So by the time that I was kind of doing my day in, day out work, which is kind of a lot of reviewing documents, redacting, drafting letters, things like that, the actual subject matter to me just wasn't interesting. And I think that's really where the disconnect was. I think if I was doing, you know, privacy litigation, for example, I'd probably find that more interesting. But because it was more sort of commercial litigation, businesses arguing with other businesses, I just didn't find it that interesting, fortunately.
Saskia?
I think for me, it's really the difference in strategy. I think every department, there's a combined element of knowledge, your legal knowledge, there's an element of problem solving, and there's also an element of strategy. And that looks a bit different depending on which department you look at. And I think the litigious strategy is very different from corporate M&A strategy. And in litigation, you know, you're sitting in rooms thinking about when you're going to submit a particular piece of evidence, or when you're going to submit a letter, or how you write that letter, or even just the prose in which you write, the deadlines that you set. That's a very different strategy to then, you know, how are we going to acquire this business, or how do we approach that, or do we enact this step in the stage of purchasing a company first, or do we do that later? Do we go in this market or that market? It's just very different thinking. So I think for me, the disconnect was the difference in strategy. I wasn't particularly motivated or excited about when are we going to submit this letter or do this court application, but some people absolutely adore that strategy and that motivates them on, you know, we're going to do this particular process in the life cycle of your claim at this particular time. And that's a very, very, very well-trodden and thoughtful path. And someone has taken their time to think about that. And there is a lot of element into that. And whether that motivates you, I think is a very particular person. And that was the disconnect for me, really.
Awesome. Let's go to the question from the virtual audience. So Rachel's going to ask this one on behalf of whoever's asked this one. So over to you, Rachel.
Yes, hi. This question is from Yasmin in the virtual audience. She's asking, how did you prepare for your assessment centre or interviews, particularly for the panellists who came from non-law backgrounds? What skills did you draw on to stand out, especially when you didn't perhaps yet feel as confident in your legal knowledge as other candidates?
So top tips on acing that assessment centre.
I think it's coming back to that point about the resources available. I do think I was just over prepared for every interview. I knew everything about the firm. I knew everything about the particular practice areas that I liked, the recent cases, because I initially, similarly, actually, I wanted to be a patent litigator, which is what Bristows is kind of known for. And I also similarly realized my issues with it and ended up in the transactional side. But at the time, I was looking at recent big pat lit cases that we'd acted on and successfully represented our clients. So I think, yeah, having that knowledge about the firm, being a bit over prepared, and also it held me in really good stead. But there will always be some variation of 3 questions that you get in interviews, and that is why law, why us, and why you. So why us being why the firm, why you, why should we hire you? And I had those down to a T. I kind of had those rehearsed ad nauseum just so that I could work my way around whatever variation of that question I received. So have those down. Competency questions are always going to come up. I might be preaching to the choir here. You know, you all know this already, but think about those classic ones. Tell us a time when, you know, and I think the last thing is they are not, as we've said, expecting you to know the law, because to be frank, I'm 1 year qualified and I'm still very much learning the law, right? You guys are applying for your training contract. So what I would say is when you're presented with something that, like, for example, one of the questions that I got is I had a partner draw out a structure of a transaction. Bear in mind, I'm a final year biochemist. What's a transaction? And he drew this structure out and he said, where do you think a lawyer would be helpful? Lawyers would be helpful in this particular scenario. And I didn't know the answer, obviously, but it's about showing your thought process, your logic, why you think that, applying some of the stuff that you might have read and think, you know, there's going to be some documents involved here. There's going to be some contracts. Lawyers are going to be advising, negotiating on whatever those transaction documents are. It doesn't require you to know the law, but it requires you to apply some critical thinking, which is a key part of this job. So don't go away and think I need to learn statute, the Companies Act, the CPR for litigation. No, that's not what you need to do at this stage. You need to be able to apply a critical sort of angle on a particular problem question and just show you're working, and that will go really far.
Can I add one kind of extra element to the question, whoever wants to answer it? Any rejections that you had from other recruitment processes or other firms that you were applying for, and what were your kind of your key learnings that you were then able to take from those setbacks into kind of future applications? Did anyone have any experiences where they just did something that they were able to kind of correct for future application processes?
Yeah, so I really want to echo these comments here. When I got the training contract at Clyde's, I did it internally, actually. So I was a paralegal. So I was definitely over-prepared. I just used every resource available to me. It's like cold calling people on LinkedIn, except you're talking to other associates, other trainees, future trainees, other paralegals. Just know everything you can about the firm, which is quite cliche. I mean, I would expect anybody who's going to an assessment center to do this, but I did have a rejection at another assessment center, and I learned a lot from it. But I think this point about critical thinking is really important because the interview was going very well, and then the interviewer asked me a question, and I just kind of froze. I gave some like generic answer, very short, and then they repeated the question. I was like, well, that's not good, right? And then, but like this idea, right, where if you don't know what answer you want to give, they want to see that you're giving thought to it, right? There's got to be some critical thinking, because eventually you're going to be in front of a client, and the client asks you something, you'd be like, yeah, I don't know, next question. Like, that's not going to work, right? They want to see that you're able to, communicate it in a certain way. They're very happy when you're always like, oh, can I think about this question? Give me a couple seconds. They love to see that you're thinking, you're moving, right? You're going to give them something. So I think that's really important. I mean, people get nervous. It happens. It's totally normal. And yeah, I guess I wasn't as prepared as I thought it was. Second time around, I made sure, oh, I'm ready for this, I'm over prepared, frankly. So yeah.
Nice.
Can I say
Any other
quick
top tips
comment?
or any kind of rejection stuff you learned from?
Well, not every firm will very openly give you feedback on what happened, particularly if you get rejected at application stage, which happened to me a couple of times, with applications that I thought were no less thought out and considered than the ones that got through. And sometimes that does happen. You think, well, how do I improve that? It's quite a nebulous concept. It's just in the ether. The recruiter said no. Why? You'll never know. So that's really hard to handle, and there's not much really you can do with that. But I think if you get an interview or an assessment center and then you get rejected, ask why. Ask why. Say, what is it that I could have done better to have got the role, or what can I improve for next time? Also making clear that if that whole cycle of applications isn't successful, you're making clear to that firm, look, I do have an interest in your firm and I will be applying again if I don't get a job elsewhere. So what I'm trying to do is improve my chances and improve my performance the next time I get to interview for HIT, because this is where I want to be. The main advice is don't take it to heart. I don't know the exact numbers, but there will be thousands of people applying for a small number of roles, right? So all you can control, and I hate to dip into like the stoicism, but like all that you can control is the quality of your application, how you do in the interviews and assessment centers. Give everything to that. And then if the rejection happens, get the feedback and reassess, but don't take it to heart as if you're not good enough, because I guarantee you all are. It just sometimes takes a bit of time, sometimes a bit of luck with the interview, with the way that it goes, but you just have to keep at it and do what you can to get your foot in the door.
Awesome, great advice. Any other questions? We haven't had questions from this side of the room. Anyone got a question they would like to ask? Yes. We'll come to the back next.
Hi, thank you, everybody. My name is Mohit. I'm a second-year law student at the University of Greenwich. I've got a particular question for Brittany, who did privacy. Is that right? I actually want to specialize in data protection and data privacy. I just want to know what tasks you undertook during your seat, and do you need any particular skills from the technology side of law? If that makes sense. Also, the Online Safety Act and other laws and regulations coming and taking place in the UK. How difficult is it to basically keep an update on all these things? Thank you.
Okay, a few questions there, but I guess to answer the last one first, it's very difficult. There are so many regulations being passed, being proposed, and I think one key thing, particularly in privacy, and given it's more of kind of like a regulatory seat, you have to kind of be able to know what's happening in which regions of the world. But very broadly, I mean, if you ask me what's going on in like, I don't know, Argentina, privacy-wise, I can't tell you, but I can use resources to find that information. I can maybe tell you, okay, South American countries currently are, proposing various privacy regulations, etc. So I think it's very difficult, but there are a lot of online resources that can summarize a lot of the updates. If you can kind of, stay on top of those, I think data guidance is really good. The global data review is really good as well. they summarize those sorts of updates all the time. In terms of the like day-to-day tasks I did in my DP and TTG seat, it was very varied. At MoFo, privacy and data security is a very global practice. So I sit in the London office along with 3 or 4 other lawyers in the privacy practice, but we work a lot with our US team, our European team as well. And so I'm often working on matters that aren't just London related. So a few things, I work on a lot of multi-jurisdictional projects. Usually clients will say, hey, we want to enroll this new online resource. What do we need to comply with, essentially? And we kind of give them all the laws, tell them what they need to know and help them implement it if that's what they would like us to do. In my team as well, we offer a lot of corporate support. So in due diligence, when transactions are happening, we review all the documents that are relevant. So, you know, privacy policies, cookie policies, all that kind of stuff. But that's a small part. I think a lot of what I do is dealing with questions from clients who are kind of saying, do we need to comply with this? How can we, you know, minimize the administrative burden of complying with like 30 different regulations and things like that? So it's kind of hard to say day in, day out what everything looks like, but I think there's a pretty good split of like advisory work, contentious work and data breaches and things like that. And then the more transactional side as well. Hopefully that answers all of the questions. Okay.
Awesome. We are running very short of time, so I'm going to go for one final question for me so I can hear from all the panelists one final time. But there will be plenty of chance to kind of ask any questions that we didn't get to through networking a little bit later on. So as we're coming to the end of the panel, I'd like to get in a very short kind of 30-second answer. What's your one bit of advice you would give to our Bright Network members in the room today as they kind of embark on their journey into a career in law? So who wants to go first? And let us see who can keep to the 30-second time limit.
I will try. I think the best thing you can do is to be authentically yourself. And I know that sounds really difficult because you want to show up in a professional space in a professional manner, but you have to think about it as a case of, well, if you get accepted into this firm, the person that you've presented yourself to be is kind of going to be the mask that you then have to wear for the next minimum 2 years on the training contract. And if you qualify there, you know, you're going to have to keep that up as well. And you obviously want to make sure that you're at a firm where you feel comfortable. And so being authentically yourself is going to be the best thing you can do.
Love that. Bang on time.
As far as preparing yourself and trying to grow your profile for applications, my main tip is to just get stuck into as much as you can. Doesn't matter if it's legal, as long as you're branching out of your studies, doing interesting things that you're interested into, growing your skills, it's always going to help, and it gives you more to talk about and more to write about. Like even now as an associate, I'm also still interested in stuff. I work in the homelessness world with voluntary work, and I work with a legal clinic there. You can reach out to people like that for random voluntary roles all over London and the UK. And I think that's underrated, and there's a lot to add to yourself by doing that.
It's going to be more difficult for the people at the end on this one. This is additive as well. These are all then it's not and/or. Yeah. It's not an or, it's an and/or. My advice just generally to go back to the application point is just to tailor what you're doing as much as you can. I don't advise casting the net really wide. I just don't. I think it's about investigating what it is that you want, the culture, the type of work, the sector, and what you're actually interested in, and using that to make the best impression that you can at the firms that you're applying to. So narrow and over prepare is what I would say.
I would just say, don't give up. Honestly, do the best that you can. You never know what opportunities lie where they do. I mean, if you told me 6 years ago I'd be doing what I'm doing now and I went through this journey, I'd be like, oh, okay. Like I had all these plans and they go out the door, really. I don't think anything's gone to plan. So yeah.
I would say, to be really philosophical, have a good deep dive into your mindset before you actually start this whole entire process. I think it's really easy. I've mentored a lot of people, and I think it's really easy to cast yourself out because maybe you don't have non-law experience, maybe you don't look like the people in the firm that you want to go to, maybe you don't already have sector experience, or you actually don't really have any big hobbies or passions. But I think try to flip the script a little bit and think, actually, the legal world's evolving, and the whole point and the whole landscape is that we need people that are different and have different minds and diverse train of thought. So go into your application, approach this process thinking, actually, I have something to offer. I am a unique individual, and I'm gonna attack sort of this challenge and application process as such. That's what I would say.
Difficult job going last. I'm going to give some more practical advice. There's loads of resources out there. One I found particularly useful was Aspiring Solicitors. I got involved with them and they did a whole coaching thing. And I learned so much on how to tailor my application and how to kind of dive into those 3 questions we were speaking about earlier. That I think my application success rate kind of went up from there. So yeah, bit of practical advice for you.
Awesome. I think we probably could have carried on for another 45 minutes, but that was a really enjoyable 45 minutes nonetheless. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause.